Okay, I am joined by the team from VERN AI here. I'm excited to be talking to you guys. You're one of the newest partners to be on our platform. So I'd love it if you could just do a quick introduction. Maybe we'll start with Craig and then Brian and then Dennis. And we'll talk a little bit about your product today and kind of what Gravity has in store for it a little bit later on. Craig, want to kick us off?
Sure, Dan. I appreciate that. Thank you. My name's Craig Tucker. I'm the CEO and founder of VERN, the AI system we're talking about.
Yep. And then I'm Brian Novak. I'm also one of the founders, the CTO of VERN.
Hey there, I'm Dennis Walters, the Faceless, and I'm the information architecture over this way, and also
Awesome.
the wrench turner.
Wrench turner, I love it. Cool. So thank you guys for being here on a, what is it, Thursday afternoon. Craig, I'll kind of let you kick us off and tell us a little bit about the story behind VERN AI. And then Brian and Dennis, by all means, if you guys have anything to add, feel free to just jump in. But tell us a little bit about how you came about, why you guys built what you built, a little bit of the story.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that, Dan. Thank you. Well, VERN has a long road from concept to completion. It started, I would say, way back even 21 years ago when I was working with a group of comedy writers down at a broadcasting school in Detroit. And we were coming up with the concept of comedy, talking about, what makes comedy, what are the altruisms, what are the things, the concepts that they consider, that carry forth throughout all of humor. And it was one of those things that just, I thought we really kind of hit on what the phenomena might have been. And fast forward several years, education, master's degree, now into now going into a doctoral program, kind of dusted some of that stuff off and looked at the model, because what we're finding is that while, these sentiment analysis and these emotional detection systems were having a decent time, they're doing okay with some emotions, but we're having a horrible time identifying humor. So we kind of thought, well, let's take a look and see if something, maybe from the past would actually have some application in the future. And well, luckily it did. And we were able to, come up with a brand new model of communication that puts the personal frame into the equation. And lo and behold, what came out was VERN. And was kind of an aha moment for us when we were, sitting there and realizes that, boy, this thing can not only tell it's a joke, but tell it's not a joke either. And then taking that same process after testing into all the other different types of emotions that we are detecting and will be detecting. So we're able to show the model worked, and it was consistent and generalized, and we're pretty proud of it so far. So that's kind of where we've come in a nutshell. Brian and I have been working together in another development firm for about 7 years now, and Dennis and I have known each other for about 15 years within the development community where we live around East Lansing, Michigan. And just through the process of creating this, getting the intellectual property together, getting it patented, and then going through all of the testing, and then building the product up. These guys have been absolutely instrumental. There's no way I could have gotten anywhere from concept, and something on a piece of paper to something that actually works without them. And I'm personally very proud of of the work everybody's done, and we kind of see a lot of value here moving forward for the product.
That's really exciting. Brian and Dennis, what's your take? How did you guys come to be involved? Obviously, Craig just alluded a little bit to it, but I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think of the product? And maybe just a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of how VERN compares itself to just other sentiment analysis tools.
Sure. Well, as Craig mentioned, I'd worked with him for a number of years at another development firm. We had met during a master's program in serious game design at Michigan State University, and that was a big spark for the VERN project. And it's because we focused on humor, kind of first and foremost, being one of the most difficult ones to detect. We were actually able to bring some game theory into that process that when people are telling jokes, there's always that belief that, humor is just so subjective, you couldn't quantify it. And Craig had a great poignant moment. It's like, if it was purely subjective, like 100%, there's no way we could tell a joke, because you'd have to be me to understand it, or you'd have to be, you. So what we discovered is that there's coding and signals that we share with one another when we communicate. We want to send a message that someone we're receiving can decode and understand. And there's some fun additional logic in place, and how our brains process and our reward systems, when it comes to learning things and sharing knowledge and things like that, all kind of really come together in this project in a really fun and fascinating way. So that's one of the big things that I've enjoyed with VERN, and being able to expound upon humor and including other emotional detections, and the possibility for this tool to really go beyond and help in other industries and fields, and peoples that need assistance detecting emotions, is there's a lot of great good that can come from this technology, and I'm always excited for that kind of thing.
That's amazing. I love this idea too, that humor was kind of one of those things that was written off as not something that a machine would be able to pick up. I think that's almost a trope in a lot of movies as well. But you're absolutely right. I love the way that you phrased that. As human beings, if it truly was 100% subjective, we would not be able to pick up on those cues. So there must be some set of cues out there that we can turn to help a machine understand humor. And when I look at the world of the internet first and foremost is an angry place, but second most is a hilarious place. The internet is full of humor. So the amount of data at your fingertips of the full range of humor is out there just to be scanned, and looking for those types of signals and trends that might indicate to an AI that this is something that's funny.
Absolutely. And we can all blame Plato because it's his fault. And that's true. Back in the ancient Greek times, they had several lessons on the subject and phenomena of humor, but they thought it was beneath them. They thought it was mean-spirited. They kind of came up with the first conceptualization of the phenomena, but then told everybody not to study it. So it wasn't until really Kierkegaard in the 1800s, leading into Freud, and then modern theory. And even today, they always tell you mind the gaps in research, and well, this is one hell of a gap.
Very cool.
Those Greek roasts must have just been brutal.
Right?
Yeah. Like what are they doing?
They did
Comedy
often
Central
serve
roast?
poison.
I
said they did often serve poison at Greek roasts.
This is true.
Oh, so they were actually brutal. They're you're not just getting roasted by your peers, you're literally getting poisoned.
But ironically, not roasted.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
Yeah. That's amazing. One of the things that was just mentioned was, and I want to get more into some of the use cases at some point soon, but I actually have personal experience with something that you just mentioned, was helping folks who might have trouble detecting humor actually go and detect it. I used to teach music for years out here in San Diego, and I actually had a lot of students who were in some way or shape or form on the spectrum. And I'll never forget, I had a brilliant marimba player who got introduced kind of late into our season. He came in after we had already begun working on the show that we were putting together. So we didn't know him too well, but me and the other instructors always tried to get people involved and get them laughing, and maybe do some teasing back and forth and try to make them feel welcome. And I'll never forget, none of our jokes were landing with this student who was just introduced to us. And it wasn't until about 2 weeks later that we met his mom. And she told us how excited he was to be on as part of the group, and he was so happy. And we both said, wow, we wouldn't have guessed. We were trying to joke around with him, and he didn't seem like he was on board with it. And she let us know in that moment that he was on the spectrum and he didn't understand humor. And not just that he didn't understand humor, but that he desperately wanted to, that he wanted to have that sense of connection when things were funny. And that moment it sticks in my mind all the time. I think back to it frequently. Partially because I wonder if we were insensitive in that moment, not realizing it. And also just the idea that he wanted to have that sense, but it just wasn't resonating with him.
Yeah, and that's something that we've kind of found in our research too. And one of the power of what we build in the model is it replicates what we feel is a true model of how we communicate. So we can actually quantify both sides of the equation. So from the sender's standpoint, what information they're packing into the message, and also into the receiver's standpoint of what message, what out of that message are they going to decode. And then there's another factor which is really important, and part of what we have is how individual groups or how individual people will actually change the nuance of what they know based off of the shared resources, that shared knowledge in between them. So that in essence, with the right amount of information, you could essentially quantify a lot of communication, if not all of it, and provide insights into people that may, not be able to read in between the lines, and or may not be able to detect that incongruity that comes in speech that is so important for our understanding.
Very cool. What other, you guys had mentioned that you thought through various use cases. In addition to this, what are some of the other types of use cases that you've come across and have thought through?
Sure. The first couple that we really looked at was chatbot system, customer service integration, being able to assist and improve those systems. Everyone hates talking to a robot. There's been that huge pushback in that community of customer service representatives and things like that. And so that's something that we very much were looking into as a even just kind of a starting point was, okay, we can start making these systems better so that they can understand, when a human is communicating with a computer, that's where we want VERN in between to really facilitate that understanding. And that can do as simple things as just kind of having a more effective decision matrix. It can detect if someone's like really, really angry about something. They can expedite to a human, someone that's qualified to handle that situation. And then just we've got a whole bunch of use cases for like when you're putting together an email, what kind of emotional flavor or barometer, if you will, are you kind of putting in your messaging? Are you sending a joke to a very straight-laced board meeting kind of situation where that would not be recommended? We're also looking at different ways that the tool can detect things like sadness and depression is a big one we're looking into, again, for that venture of using this tool to help people. If it can do things to do early detection and help people out that way and get them connected to the right resources. Those are just kind of a handful that we kind of focused on.
I was going to say, for crazy frivolous use cases, we also considered, hey, we could write a dating simulator using this. Possibly a mob-based Cards Against Humanity clone type deal.
That was fun. But it just there's so many different use cases, Dan. Anywhere from like OCR for categorizing emotions in text for large data operations, to signals intelligence, to risk assessment, particularly if there's somebody who's a threat, You could have an automated system that would contact law enforcement and healthcare representatives. There's just a lot, from a human resources angle too. Being able to track how your employees are dealing with one another, what emotions they're using, if there's an abusive situation. Games is another huge one too, for non-player characters or for interactions within the game that may require certain emotional output from players that would then cause gameplay to change, for example. And then toys, we even thought that the little semi-sentient little robots that run around, the little pets, could very well respond to your emotions. So there's a lot, kind of like Brian said, wherever a computer and a human being come together, we kind of see that would be our use case, especially when you want to see emotions.
That's great. I want to hone in briefly on the idea of sadness detecting. There's a couple angles that I see that it could be extremely useful. One of which you mentioned, obviously, which is early detection of depression and potentially, suicidal thoughts. I have another founder friend of mine who is building in a platform that allows teenagers and young adults to live journal over voice. And their intent is that they'll be able to eventually pick up emotions for early detection and route them to types of resources that might be able to support them. I could see your product being integrated as a way for them to kind of leapfrog forward in that case. Another really interesting, and Brian, you mentioned chatbots. I gave a talk a few years back on how designers need to be thinking about AI and be involved in the process, and how, when that goes poorly, it can range from something funny where AI just messes up to the accidentally cruel to very dangerous. And in the accidentally cruel category, there's kind of a famous instance that made its way around the internet a few years back, where there was a chat bot and it wanted feedback and on their product. So the chat bot, when you talked with it, after a while, asked the question, "Hey, how would you describe our product to your grandma?" And the famous example where you have edge case analysis, where it's very difficult to handle types of edge cases, the person responded back with, "My grandma's dead." And the chat bot responded back with, "That's awesome. Thank you for your input." Which, on its surface can be humorous, but if that was a recent occurrence for that person, it can be accidentally cruel. Obviously unintended, absolutely. But there's not a whole lot of, actually I should say it's an enormous amount of effort for a developer to programmatically or hierarchically categorize all of these types of edge cases. So in this case, there might be capabilities within the chatbot based off of something like VERN to detect, wow, this was a sad message back to us. Perhaps we shouldn't respond back with, "That's awesome." Right. That one really sticks out to me as a great use case for how this might be integrated into chatbots.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And we found, with working some of our first clients and the pilots we've worked on, we've kind of found that as being true, that because we offer a more sentence by sentence level analysis with a confidence level 0 to 100 on each emotion versus a negative, positive, neutral mixed on the entire paragraph. We were able to have clients tell us that, look, we were able to find, not only are they upset, okay, that's fine, but what are they upset about? And all of the 5 to 10 sentences that they generally send to us, in a message, sometimes it's hard for us to figure that out. And we were able to actually help them show sentence by sentence the problems they're facing. So in one instance, it wasn't the 15-minute wait at the drive-in. It was some extra fees that had been added due to some other extraneous events that, so that they could actually accurately address the problem directly with the client. So yeah, it absolutely can help in those circumstances, and specifically, in cases where it's ambiguous, where you need kind of a third party to tell you, well, seems pretty sad to me,
Yeah. I'd love to hear a little bit about the technology itself. obviously without opening up your kimono or giving away any kind of IP secrets, but Brian and Dennis, maybe you guys could talk us through how did you go about developing this? What were some of the challenges or thought processes that led to the product as it is today?
Well, a big part of the challenge is obviously, a lot of systems go with that approach of like, okay, we have to program every single possible phase into this tool. So a big challenge for us was, whittling down what those conditions and flags, as they were, kind of like I was talking earlier about humor, how we send signals to one another to kind of cue you in. And humor, it can be as innocuous as a knock knock joke, which always starts with knock knock.
Knock.
But so like figuring out that language and how they kind of relate to one another was a major component of what we had to do to get VERN up and running. A lot of analysis, a lot of different types of messaging that we had to test, and then kind of the fine tweaking and identifying those different ways that language can be taken. Sarcasm was a big one that our system detects to a certain degree, and we have plans on implementing that can take that confidence even further to detect when someone's being sarcastic with you, which is hard to detect even when we're just talking with one another. I think too, the techniques that we have in place to do things like detecting when things are incongruous. Incongruity is a huge component that's going to be worked into our system, and the way that we implement a lot of neuroscience into the understanding of the system, so that by myself communicating with you, Dan, the first time we talk with one another, we kind of all start from like a 0 point, and then I tell you a joke you find funny. Okay, I now have this greater understanding of who you are, and that you would respond to that kind of thing more positively. Or on the other side is like, oh, I said something that really offended you. I don't, I then categorize that. So a lot of that, that's where a lot of the machine learning and artificial intelligence, that actual intelligence really comes into play. So it's a lot of these kind of moving parts and how they all kind of connect and relate and influence each other is both a fun and sometimes frustrating challenge to work through. But it's
I can imagine. You think about something like Netflix's recommendation engine, right? Where it learns the masses' behavior as a whole, and typically what some folks like over other folks, but it also learns your behavior and what you might like. I would argue not particularly well, but that's its goal, and sometimes it's held up as a beacon of great recommendation. In this case, the challenge that I see, as you called out, is that individuals have different reactions to certain humor. In that way, it's almost like we need to learn, just like Netflix learns my preferences, their humor preferences. But a lot of that, can come from, things like nonverbal communication, or utterances like, huh, reactions.
Sure.
That might pose difficult to capture on that individual basis. What do you think, from an ongoing learning standpoint, is the goal to get that more kind of aggregated approach, or have you thought about how to capture some of those individual types of preferences?
Sure. Well, let's go ahead and jump in and take that one, guys. So for the individual preferences, what we describe that as, Dan, is a personal frame, right? So that everybody has an understanding of the world according to them, and in and of themselves, and that each one of us has a common frame which is generalized. But then there are subtleties in how we see that generalized frame That would be our personal frame. And sometimes they overlap, for instance, and that's why you can get things like, you know, doctors will have a certain language that they talk to. You know, a podiatrist will have a certain joke that only another podiatrist will understand. Plumbers and same thing, you know, so on and so forth. So each group kind of has their own type of different types of languages. So what we've done is we're building in the ability to make custom framing for, you know, for our clients to directly identify their domain, obviously. So like a bank, financial institution has different languages and different sentiment and feelings, you know, on both sides of the coin for different products. For example, interest rate, boring, doesn't have any emotionality tied to it. Can have a lot of emotionality tied to it within a credit union. So what we're doing is we're fleshing out those individual frames on a domain basis, and then also through our machine learning that we have, and the ability that the system has to learn as it goes and get better. It will constantly refine that, and theoretically, you know, we're seeing some of it now, but theoretically we'll see that these groups of people with shared interests and shared understandings will start to come out of the data. So we don't necessarily need to bias it now, predicting what we're going to find when we can run the statistics on it as it happens and actually kind of see how those languages moving, because it's not a static thing. It always changes, right? So the language, and as you well know, evolves. So like how we spoke to each other around the Civil War in 1860s is certainly not the way we'd speak to each other now. So the language always has to evolve, and that is just basically because each individual and individual groups, regionalities, ethnicities, and they're putting everything in the proper cultural, social context will actually help to add the little bit of subtlety to that interpretation, and that actually makes it more accurate.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it also comes into play when you think about terms like president. You know, I turned 42 last week, and it was the day before my birthday. It was the day before that day that I realized, oh, president, the one who presides. And my head just kind of exploded in and of itself.
What's that meme? I was today years old when I learned this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
That's another thing too, is and there's a great point, Dan, that you kind of stumbled on is memes and the way we communicate in a kind of a hyper temporal type of a fashion. Right? We're very quickly changing these interpretations based off of topical events, and that has to be incorporated in any model, or otherwise it's just going to become archaic. And so that is something we really are, we're concerned about, we're focused on, and something that we're trying to bake into our system, so that these words will stay fresh and people will still be able to relate.
Well, I think this is a very good topic to allow me to transition into telling you what we have planned. So we are kicking off the next phase of what we're building at Gravity in terms of some fun video series. In addition to talking to partners like yourselves and world-class data scientists that we interview. We are kicking off a content series that we call 1 Month Builds, where we're going to use partners' technology like yours, license it from them, and build something with it. This conversation around the contextual nature of humor and how that changes is super relevant, because I have a problem. I think I'm hilarious. And anytime I think that anyone says out loud that I think I'm hilarious, that probably means they're not. However, we're going to set that aside in this particular use case. I make jokes regularly with my friends, and they don't seem to be laughing at them. So I have a hypothesis. My hypothesis is this. Most of my friends are either elder millennials or Generation X, and they grew up watching TV that had laugh tracks, indicating to them that they need a background laugh to help them think that something's funny. It's definitely not that I'm not funny. It's that just they need the audience cue to help them understand that this is funny. And so what we're planning on building is we're going to take a voice to text system we're going to use one of the open source models that's out there. I think we're going to use I think it's called like Deep Voice or something like that. Build using Raspberry Pi a machine including a microphone and a speaker that in real time picks up what I'm saying, translates that to text, runs it through VERN AI, and if it detects humor from me, the speaker will loudly play a laugh track.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
You could
awesome.
also tie it. You could also tie it into instantrimshot.com.
I love yes.
Rimshots as a service.
You thought about the Rimshot as another one. I wasn't aware of instantrimshot.com. Tell me about that.
Oh, it's Rimshots as a service. There's
For
also
a monthly SaaS fee. You too can experience real-time rim shots when you tell a joke to your friends.
There's also sadtrombone.com if you want to go for the opposite as well.
I love both of those. So is this I brazenly before we started recording said that this was probably a use case that you guys hadn't considered. I'm wondering now, based off of what Dennis told me, if I might be eating those words. Had you considered this before?
You are incredibly adjacent to one of my harebrained ideas from years ago when we were thinking of use cases.
It's pretty close, yeah.
But it's not exactly the same. But
no, I love
we hadn't thought to make a device of it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that.
That's brilliant. Yeah, Raspberry Pi all the way. Love it.
Fantastic. What we'll probably have to connect offline more about it, but sure. What level of confidence in humor in the text? Because I know you have scoring mechanisms for each one of the categories of emotions. Off the top of your heads, what do you think? Should I, if it detects 50%, humor in my voice, or how should we go about setting that threshold?
Well, generally our thresholds are set at anything 51% or more is a detection at right around the 50% threshold. And we've kind of set up our metrics in order to hit that, so it's logical. As you move up, obviously towards 100, the more signals, the more confident. So perhaps a scale, or a volume indication or something like that, or
the short chuckle around the 50%. Get a nice medium one around the 7.
The rolling on the floor laughing maybe for around 98, 100%. So yeah, no, it sounds awesome, definitely, and we'll certainly talk. I'd love to talk a little bit more on the phenomena of humor too, and.
That's great. You actually, I had never considered this before, and you just gave me an idea, Brian, that maybe, that 51%, maybe it's just a rim shot, like it's only a little funny, but if it detects, a higher degree of comedy in what I said, maybe that's the full-blown audience. We have a graduated approach to what we play. Interesting. We're gonna have to play around with this. So we're gonna.
You might also want to consider a maximum cutoff on the score. Because 100% attempt at humor might be trying too hard.
That's true. I have a feeling that if I walked around, like if I go play golf with my buddies and we're in the midst of golf and I go, "Hey guys, knock knock," they're not going to find whatever comes out of my mouth next funny.
Right, exactly.
That's where you need the really obnoxious laugh, where it's like you can pick out like 2-3 people in that crowd that were just trying a little too hard.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
I might also suggest carrying a pipe with you. Mitch Hedberg tells us that the pipe is the punchline indicator. And both of these devices together could kill.
I love it. Mitch Hedberg, gone before his time. What a wonderful human being. Hilarious beyond measure. I missed that guy. This is fantastic.
Well, like he says, it was a fight to the finish, which is a good place to stop.
Exactly. All right. So I'll keep you updated on our progress on that. As I said, we're calling these one month builds. So our goal is to get this thing built in a month. We haven't kicked it off yet, but I'll let you know. Before we go, maybe can you guys give me, how would you sum up, give me like a one-liner of VERN AI, and we'll talk just briefly, about how folks could go access it through Gravity AI. So what's your kind of couple, your elevator pitch for VERN?
Sure. Well, I guess I'll jump in because I'm sure the guys want me to do that. So what VERN is, simply is a patented AI system that detects human emotions, detects the latent clues that we leave in our communication that we don't know are actually there, and in which case it actually helps to aid in system understanding of human emotions. So wherever a human and computer can meet, and there's a need for understanding how they're communicating, then VERN is the use case to help.
Fantastic. Now, I believe you guys have built this in Python. Is that correct?
We
Go, actually.
Yeah,
oh no,
Golang, and then we have some Python intermediaries to kind of help.
gotcha. Okay.
Things.
Well, obviously, if they want to get in touch with you directly, folks who are watching this, they can reach out to you on the website.
It's VERNAI.com.
VERNAI.com. That's right. Or VERN is quickly going to be listed in Gravity's marketplace. So if you don't have Go or Python experience, you're able to just download the container. And this is actually, we're going to build in the 1 month builds. We might actually add extra steps just to put Docker on Raspberry Pi so that we'll actually run the Gravity container
There you go.
that hosts VERN. So we can just use our own simple API to run it in. So even if you're just, have a basic understanding of engineering, you should be able to go download the container and install it into whatever you're building. So hopefully you're able to do that. Gravity-AI.com.
Mental note, time to generate an ARM build.
Awesome. Well, this has been a super fun conversation, and I am so excited about data science in general, but sentiment analysis has just so many quirks and interesting things. So it was a pleasure talking with you all today about that.
Thanks, Dan. We appreciate it.
Dan.
You bet. Awesome, guys. Catch you later.